That's mind-boggling. Now, animal cells do not have a cell wall. None of this right here, no cell wall. So what do we have? Well, strap in, space cowboys, because I'm gonna take you on a journey inside of a plant cell. Redeem Academy. Hey, what is up, space cowboys? Johnny here with Redeem Academy. I'm here to help you get the most out of your education while giving God the glory he deserves. Today I'm going over lesson 2 of my cells unit in the middle of a year of biology. In this lesson, I'll be going over 3 things. I'll be talking about plant cells, what makes them different than animal cells. I'll be going over more organelles that are found in all cells, and I'll be going over 2 unique types of plant cells. Big question today, what do avocado cells and leaf cells show about God using the same basic organelles in many ways? Speaking of avocados, today is powered by the mighty avocado, the green powerhouse that keeps your brain fueled and your belly happy. The mighty avocado is packed with a fuel that keeps my neurons firing faster than they do when someone says free snacks in the teacher's lounge. These little nutrient ninjas help you think clearly, stay focused, and keep from accidentally gluing your fingers together during a science experiment. The mighty avocado didn't choose the life of greatness. It was peacefully vibing in the kitchen on a shelf when Destiny pointed and said, "Yes, the squishy one, guacamole." Smash that subscribe button before your avocado turns brown, and grab a notebook at redeemacademy.org, and I'll give you a lifetime supply of guacamole. Just kidding, I don't have that much guacamole. But speaking of guacamole, oh yes, today is all about guacamole. Oh, green gooey goodness.
Come and get your guac.
I love guacamole. All right, well, strap in, space cowboys, because I'm gonna take you on a journey inside of a plant cell. There we go, bottom of a leaf cell. We're gonna go through the stoma, right past a couple guard cells, and inside of the plant, inside of a cell. Now here we're going through the cell wall, and the cell wall kind of looks like little wood fibers because that's basically what a cell wall is. And then we're going to zoom in and we can see inside. Now we're inside of a plant cell, and we can see that big blue thing is called the central vacuole. That's something only plant cells have. And then I think we're going to zoom in on a chloroplast after this. Yeah, so now we can see the light shining down on this funny thing that looks like a chloroplast. It looks like it has a bunch of green pancakes inside of it or something. And photosynthesis actually happens inside of the chloroplast. And so that's right now we're zooming in. We're seeing photosynthesis happening. And that is like half a sugar molecule, and then they're turning into whole sugar molecules right there. And that magic little baby caterpillar right there is called a mitochondria. And it is taking the sugars and making something else that the cell uses for energy that you're going to learn about in the next lesson called ATP. So the plant cell makes sugars and then throws them into the mitochondria to make ATP. And that is how the plant cell do. And we're zooming back out. Big picture, we were inside of a leaf. So in that quick little animation, we saw kind of the main things that we're going to see today that are different about plant cells: cell wall, chloroplast, the central vacuole, which is a big water tank, and we also saw the mitochondria, which I'm going to talk about today. Let's get to the notes. Okay, so here is our big, beautiful plant cell, and I'm just going to go down a little bit, and I'm going to label this sucker. It is a plant cell. And we're going to be labeling the organelles again. Now, in general, when we see a plant cell, they tend to be drawn as rectangles. They're not always rectangles, but when you see a rectangular cell like this, you should think plant cell. Now, in general, the basic building block of every living thing is always a cell. And the little structures inside of cells that each have their own unique job are called organelles. And so the first organelle I'm going to talk for a little bit about is the cell wall. Animal cells don't have a cell wall, but plant cells do. All right, so remember my trip to the toilet paper factory. Imagine that there were a single wall around the entire toilet paper factory. That would represent like a cell wall. Here's like a 3-dimensional model someone made of a plant cell. So even though it's not square, you can see that it has like straight lines for its cell wall. And so they have, they don't have like a circular appearance to them, but they're like flat lines that attach at specific angles. And so that's the idea behind plant cells, is there's sort of a square or an angular nature to them. This would be like the nucleus. and all those other things around the nucleus are different organelles inside the cell. Now here's a picture from under a microscope of a real plant. Okay, you can see again the cell wall, and so this stuff that isn't green, it's kind of brown, and it's sort of rectangular, but maybe not quite as much as like the diagrams, but it's got more of a square appearance to it. And the cells aren't all perfectly square, but this is actually why cells are called cells. I want to say it was James Hook, fact check me on that, but somebody looked at the first cell or the first cells under a microscope and thought they looked like little chambers, little jail cells, or maybe it was the cells that priests sleep in, I can't remember, and said, hey, these look like little rooms inside of a building, and that's how cells got named cells. And so plant cells are particularly rectangular or square in their appearance, and it comes from their cell wall, and that's what gives them this unique shape. Now, another thing I wanted to mention is that the cell wall is what makes up the majority of the weight of a tree, of a log. Fiber around the cell wall, if we look back, these fibers that kind of look blue in this picture, kind of look brown in this picture, most of a tree is actually dead wood, with just a little bit of living wood still alive. And so when you look at a giant forest like this, and it's really cool, I get to live in a place that actually looks like this. I live an hour from a forest like this, and every winter I go skiing and I just ride a chairlift and I look over giant forests, and we see this stuff in Oregon, and it's just amazingly beautiful. And all the material, all the biomass, just, I mean, I can't even imagine. I could ask ChatGPT how much of the earth is covered in this. Let's actually do it. Look at this number. There are an estimated 100 billion to 100 trillion tons of cellulose on the earth. It's hard to put that in perspective. Let's ask for it in number of pickup trucks. Okay, I said, tell me how much that would be in F-150 pickup trucks. 110 trillion fully loaded F-150 pickup trucks. I mean, I don't think you understand how much a trillion is. There's only, that's mind-boggling, because there's only 7 or 8 billion people on the earth. Okay, so just to understand how much that is, there's like 8 or 9 billion people on the earth. So I said, so that's enough for every person on the earth to have how many pickup trucks? I think it's going to be like 10,000. Yeah, 13,000 each. That's a crazy amount of cellulose. And cellulose is fiber. It's what's in the cell wall of plants. So look back at my original picture. There is so much cellulose, just the fiber that's in cell walls, that there's enough weight for every person on the earth to have 13,000 pickup trucks worth of fiber. Every person on the earth could have that much weight of cellulose. That's how much cellulose is on the planet. And that's just produced by plants making their cell wall. That's a lot of fiber on the earth. That's a lot of cell walls on the earth from plants. I think that deserves some guacamole. Oh, good. I love guacamole. All right, so every plant has a cell wall, a rigid wall system built outside of the cell. I haven't told you about the TARP system yet. That's called a cell wall. Now, animal cells do not have a cell wall. None of this right here, no cell wall. So what do we have? Sneak peek back at the animal cell. What's on the outside of an animal cell is called a cell membrane. So number 2 is a cell membrane. Now, imagine that our giant factory, instead of having a wall around it, had a giant TARP system around it containing it. Doesn't have that either because it's not a cell. But it reminds me of a thing in Arizona I always like to talk about. Now, this isn't the best picture, but this guy holding up the pink underwear, those are pink boxer shorts, is known because as the meanest sheriff or the meanest warden in all of Arizona back when he was doing his thing. He's retired now. Because he makes his prisoners sleep and live outside in Arizona. And he started doing this because soldiers were fighting a battle over in one of the Middle Eastern countries, maybe Afghanistan or Iraq, and they had to sleep outside in tents. And so this warden or sheriff was like, you know what? Our jail is going to make people sleep outside too then. And then the other funny thing about this guy was he didn't like that prisoners thought they were tough. And so he made them sleep on pink bed sheets and wear pink underwear. I just love the way this guy thinks. Let's mess a little bit with these prisoners. If you want to be cool, don't go to jail. And so they had to sleep outside and they had to go to jail outside. In the same way, if they had like tents outside, they didn't have a whole wall around them. If there was one big tarp system around their whole encampment, that would be the perfect example of a cell membrane. And so the cell membrane is like a big tarp system around the cell factory that defines the factory's borders. Okay, now both animal cells and plant cells have to think about energy. How do you power your factory? Now plant cells have basically solar panels. Let me tell you about those. So in plant cells, there are these little green things, and I've got them all over my plant cell here, and they're called chloroplasts. Now you saw chloroplasts in that first video I showed you, and they basically are able to take the energy from the sun and use it to make sugar. That's an amazing technology. God created something absolutely incredible in the little chloroplasts. So again, here's this section of the video. You see the light shining down on the chloroplast. It's got these funny little coin looking things or pancake looking things, and the light shines down, and out of the chloroplast pops sugar. There it is. And two of those together makes a sugar molecule, like you've learned about from me. This would be the equivalent of having solar panels on top of your factory, or solar panels inside of your factory, or where I live in Central Oregon, they're just putting up these solar farms everywhere to power things. Like we have these big data centers, and they put up these solar farms nearby to power the data centers. So solar panels are just an amazing technology because they can take sunlight and they can use it to generate electricity. And in the same way, chloroplasts do something very similar. They take sunlight, they excite an electron, and they're able to use that to then create sugar molecules. And if you take a more advanced biology course with me someday, I'll go into the nitty-gritty details of how it works, and it's really amazing, and it should make you believe in God. It's absolutely amazing, the systems God created to make it happen. It's super complex and super sophisticated, and there's no way it just magically came about by some evolutionary process. All right, so the solar panel of the cell factory that takes in the sun's energy to make sugar is called a chloroplast. Now, that's going to move us to the mitochondria. Let's fill that in. And the mitochondria is a generator. All right, so let's take some time to talk about what a generator is. The other day, the power went out at my house, and I was like, this is a crisis. I'm working on something really important right now. I was watching Obi-Wan, the series, you know, where Obi-Wan and Darth Vader get in a big lightsaber battle at like a gravel pit or something, and all the rocks come down on Obi-Wan, and then he breaks out, and then he beats up Darth Vader. Sorry, spoiler alert, it's been out for years. But anyway, I needed to watch this, and my phone was about to die. And so I had this epiphany. I was like, I'm gonna go start my truck just so I can plug in my phone and charge it. And then I'm sitting out in my driveway, charging my phone, and I'm like, this seems kind of like a waste. But I also realized, you know what I'm doing? I'm using my truck as a generator. Now, maybe you have one of these. I don't have one of these. We don't do enough camping to justify buying one of these for sure. But this is called a generator. And I don't know, if this one, it's made by Cabela's. Yo, Cabela's, hit me up, sponsor. But basically, this is amazing. You just put gas in it, you pull the thing, and then it starts running, and it produces electricity. And so it's a gasoline engine that when it runs, generates electricity. So you can do this in your car too. It'll do the same thing and not go anywhere and just generate electricity, and you can charge your cell phone. It feels like a real waste though. That's called a generator, okay? Maybe you've got experience with this. Well, turns out there are even bigger ones. Do you know about this? Maybe you've walked around a big industrial building before, like this is a picture from a hospital, or if like those data centers I was talking about that we have in my town, they have a whole bunch of these, and I know some guys that work there, and I was like, what do you guys do? Do you drain the fluid out of those things? Because you never use them, probably. And he said, we actually just run them sometimes just so we can refill them because diesel goes bad eventually. But they fill these things up with diesel, and then if the power ever goes out, and let's take the hospital scenario, you're a hospital, the power goes out, you've got patients on ventilators that breathe for them. If the power goes out, the thing stops breathing for the person dies. That's kind of a big deal. And so what you do is you power up these generators when the power goes out, and they start pumping out electricity. And so even during a power outage, things like a hospital or a Facebook data center or whatever is in need of electricity, no matter what, they can have these generators outside their buildings, and they're just backup generators full of diesel, ready to put out energy as needed. Well, that brings us to this little guy, the magic jelly bean of the cell, the mitochondria. Jelly beans. I love jelly beans. So the mitochondria is the generator of the cell. You can pump into him sugar or fat or protein or other food, and he will put out ATP. And you haven't even learned what that is yet, but ATP is the only thing that cells actually use to work. And so the mitochondria is the generator that always takes whatever you eat and always makes the energy that the cell needs. Okay, his name, mitochondria. He's a generator. He just looks like a little red bean inside of the cell. Number 4, mitochondria. And actually, let's write it mitochondrion. That's one, singular, but everybody always says mitochondria, which is plural, just like bacteria, bacterion. All right, while we're talking about chloroplasts, let's actually look inside of a leaf cell and see what it actually looks like. This is where we're going to find the highest number of chloroplasts in one cell. The journey into a leaf. So beautiful. Look at all those little green bubbles. So those little green bubbles are chloroplasts. And they're kind of moving around. There's this thing called cytoplasmic streaming where they're really going to start moving around quickly, and they're trying to get more and more sunlight. They want to do as much photosynthesis as possible. You feed us! Is that the chloroplasts talking to the sun? Not sure. Okay, and so you can see them starting to move around. The green discs are called chloroplasts. Yes, they are. Good job, science video guy. Air bubble. You let us breathe. I think this guy's worshiping the plant while he makes this video. The energy they harvest is used to split water and carbon dioxide. Very true. This is where the air we breathe comes from. There we go. Now they're really starting to move. So that's cytoplasmic streaming, where they really start circling around, and that's so they can get more and more sunlight and get the fluids moving inside of themselves. Yep, to get exposed evenly to the light. That's right. Beautiful, intricate, totally complicated. You are beautiful. This guy's a tree hugger. When I was in college, I went to college at a secular university, and I didn't really know what liberals were and conservatives were, but I'm definitely now a conservative. And back then, you would run into people who were very liberal. And one thing you discover about liberals is they're not embarrassed about it, just like I wouldn't be embarrassed about being a conservative. And I remember people describing themselves as tree-hugging dirt worshippers. Oh my gosh. Isn't that sad? And you see this, you are beautiful. Look at the things he said in this video. You feed us. You let us breathe. You are beautiful. So I had to go look this up. I just had this in the tip of my tongue. Who exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worship and serve the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. And this is just a little passage in Romans chapter 1 where God is talking about men turning away from him. Romans chapter 1 is all about men turning away from him. And this is like people who describe themselves like this. I'm a tree-hugging dirt worshiper. It's in man's nature to worship something. If mankind is going to say, I don't want you, God, he's still going to worship something. And you look at this video, whoever this guy is that made this video, he wants to worship. He looks at creation and he sees beauty, he sees design, he sees the glory of God. Other parts of creation, the heavens declare the glory of God. Like so much of creation is shouting, there's a creator, there's design. And this guy who I would bet money is an atheist or an agnostic, he's looking at creation and he wants to worship, but he doesn't know where to point it. So what does he do? He points it at the creature. He starts worshiping the creature. He starts thanking the creature. Thank you, creature, for letting me eat. Thank you, creature, for letting me breathe. You are beautiful, creature, which the creature is beautiful. But all of this worship that's in our hearts, it's not supposed to go to the creature. It's supposed to go to the Creator. And when we study God's creation, we see the beauty, we see the order, we see the design, we see the glory. We're supposed to glorify God when we do this. We study science and it should stir up in us so much awe and wonder and glory to God. And I don't know if you guys noticed this thing I say at the beginning of every video, but I always say, I'm here to help you make the most of your education through content that gives God the glory He deserves. As we study science, we should be moved to worshiping God and adoring God because we look at what He's made and it should move us to worship, and we want to make sure we point that worship in the right place. What a sad thing that this guy who loves, I bet this guy loves science. He's pointing his worship in the wrong direction. Guacamole.
Guacamole.
So these little guys floating around in the cell, bringing all the energy from the sun to all food chains, are called chloroplasts. Notes. Okay, and they are called leaf cells. Now, if I was a super plant nerd, I could probably call them like superior apical meristem or some weird name like that, but I don't know that much about plants, so we're just going to call them the cells on the leaf. All right, really now what we've all been waiting for. Guacamole, avocado cells, the cells of an avocado, one of God's greatest gifts to mankind. Second only maybe to pizza. Okay, so these cells are called avocado flesh cells. Now, to understand the picture, I'm going to show you this. You need to understand what this is. This is called an electron microscope. Now, when things get teeny little bitty, they get so small that light can't bounce off of it and bounce back and give us enough light for us to understand what we're looking at. But electrons are smaller than light. And so scientists have created these amazing microscopes called electron microscopes that bounce off electrons instead of light. You've probably seen pictures from an electron microscope before. They look really weird because they have this weird texture to them. That is a snowflake. Everything kind of looks black and white and gray under an electron microscope. Here is the mouth of a worm. I don't know what kind of worm, but it's freaky looking, isn't it? This is a bacteria, and bacteria will reproduce sexually sometimes through a tube, and this is called conjugation. And so that might be what's going on here, I'm guessing. I'm actually not sure. I didn't Google it or look it up. These are some red blood cells and maybe some white blood cells as well under an electron microscope. Electron microscopes can take pictures of larger items too. I think this is an ant or a fly. So you can see their eyeballs. So this would be something you could see with your eyes. This is a tick. Now, what's interesting about this photo is they can add color to the photos afterwards. And so they can add sort of like artistic things to the photos as well. Now, here is a picture where they took an avocado and they sliced it in half like with a samurai sword. They got really close. And so that brown stuff you're looking at there, they've colored it brown to represent the cell wall. And we're looking at one of the avocado cells cut open, and all those little green things are vesicles. Now remember, in our generalized plant cell, vesicles are just these little brown globs right here that bud off of the Golgi. So a vesicle is like number 11. But like I told you last time, generalized cells aren't the way cells really look. And so in this avocado flesh cell, vesicles make up most of what's inside of an avocado. And that's because maybe you're not a connoisseur of the avocado like I am, but I mean, I got some corn and some beans in here because this is guacamole, but an avocado is mostly fat. And so these avocado flesh cells, so all of these orbs of green goo are actually orbs of fats inside of vesicles waiting to be consumed by yours truly. Now, where do you make all those fats? You make them in this little thing. It's not a rough ER, it's a smooth ER. The rough ER makes proteins, the smooth ER makes fats. The room in the cell factory where fats are made is the smooth ER. Oh, we need to go over our two cells that we've already talked about. Plump cells packed with fat-rich vesicles that make the fruit soft are called flesh cells. And the green cells filled with chloroplasts that let the plants soak up the sunlight and make food are called leaf cells. The last thing we need to talk about is why plants go like this. Wah, 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 wah. All right, here is a time-lapse video of somebody who loves plants taking a video of their plant slowly becoming more and more depressed. But then they come in and they give their plant some water, and now look at how it changes their plant's attitude. Brings back his spirits and makes him so, oh, but he's depressed again. And he's sad, but now he's happy. Wait for it. And now he's a happy plant again. And so how is this possible that plants do this? You're going to learn more about this in later days, but it's called osmosis. And plants especially show it because they have a large storage tank in every one of their cells. Now, that giant storage tank, I colored it green, it probably should be colored blue because it's filled with water. Number 10 is called a central vacuole. Okay, and you can think of the central vacuole as like water storage tanks on the roof of a building. I don't know about your childhood, but I loved the Ninja Turtles with all my heart. And when I was a kid, I used to watch Ninja Turtle movies, and they were always running around on the tops of buildings in big cities. And so they'd be running by, and there'd be like a big tank of water like this, and they'd like knock Shredder off the roof or knock that off the roof, and it'd run into Shredder or something. So I feel like I've seen this kind of thing before. Or maybe you're from a small town like me, and you had like a water tower in your town. This is actually a small town outside of the small town where I grew up, even smaller town. But my grandma grew up in like Flat, Iowa, and I'd go visit her, and every small town had one of these water towers. Do you know why they put water in a tower way up high? That's really strange when you think about it. Like, who wants to put all that work in to put water in a tower way up high? Just keep it down at ground level, right? Thinking. The reason they do it is for pressure. If you get the water way up high, then when you turn on the faucet, the water comes out whoosh, with lots of pressure. And I think there's a known distance of how high you want it to be, so you get just the right pressure. Anyway, plants have a giant water storage tank inside of themselves because it doesn't rain all the time, and they have to sit around and wait for more water to come, and so they got to have a good backup supply. That thing, the giant water storage tank in every cell, is called the central vacuole. Now, the last thing is, just like animal cells, they have cytoplasm. So as they start to run out of water and evaporate water out of themselves, they're going to have to leak water out of this tank into this tank called the cytoplasm to keep all the concentrations of everything in the cytoplasm right where they need to be. And that, my friends, is plants. Instead of taking a bow, I'll have some guacamole. All right, big question. What do avocado cells and leaf cells show about God using the same basic organelles in many ways? Well, I think the big idea here that I'm trying to get across to you is pretty much what the question said. God uses organelles in many ways. So we teach you this generalized animal cell, or we teach you this generalized plant cell, but really God doesn't generalize things. He specializes things. He makes a special kind of cell for the leaf so that it can be like a solar panel. He makes a specialized cell for the flesh of an avocado so it can be filled with fat to feed people. God takes these organelles and he specializes them into a specific function for a specific plant's part called a tissue. And this tissue will have these organelles modified in this way to do this job, and it'll be an avocado. And God will modify these tissues and these cells in this way, and it'll become a leaf, and it'll do photosynthesis. And God takes the parts and modifies them and makes them beautiful for the functions they're supposed to perform. And as you study it, there's a famous quote that as we do science, we think God's thoughts after him. When we study cells, we get to go deep down into the tiniest pieces of what God made, and we get to study what he did, and we get to worship him and glorify him as we see how wise and amazing he is. And there's just so many mysteries still that we don't understand fully what he did and why he did it the way he did. And it's just wonderful to think God's thoughts after him. Hope this was a great lesson for you. Peace out, Girl Scouts.